Bob Edgar, Common Cause, former member of Congress.
Thank you. I'm Bob Edgar, and I'm delighted to be here this morning. Common Cause was created 38 years ago by a Republican by the name of John Gardner. And John and a group of folks put together a citizens lobby to work both on the election process and getting a fresh start for democracy. And both of those activities are needed today more than ever before. Voter suppression and obstacles to voting are all issues that Common Cause has worked aggressively on over the past several months, hoping that this election, with so many voters coming to the polls, will be a fair, open, and honest election. I have to say that I talked briefly with my friend, former Senator Jack Danforth, after the press conference that was held with Warren Rudman. And I shared with him a copy of a document that we've published and we have available to everyone. It's called Voting in 2008, 10 Swing States. This has gotten a lot of attention on all of the major media, and it looks at the 10 states that have the most obstacles to voting. Now, voter registration is an obstacle, and that's why Acorn and other community groups go out door to door, knocking on doors, getting people to register. It's something that happens throughout the country. I wish that it would just go away. In fact, I'd like to see every infant born in the United States and every new immigrant that is brought into our nation automatically be registered to vote. Why should it be so hard? When I moved last year from New Jersey to Northern Virginia, the post office followed me, Social Security followed me, but my voter registration didn't follow me. I had to literally go and be registered. I think many of you know registration was put in place by white males who didn't want women and persons of color to vote. There are inherent problems in our current voter registration system that depend heavily upon citizen groups such as Acorn to hire temporary workers who register voters. There will always be a small number of these workers who submit phony registration simply to avoid the hard work of finding unregistered voters. But even when they uncover these false registrations in their internal audits, Acorn and other voter registration groups are legally required to submit them flagged for attention and enforcement actions if necessary. Election officials also take steps to screen these applications out. There is no evidence that these false registrations lead to false attempts to actually cast a ballot. And that's the important thing. How do we get 80 and 90% of our people to actually cast a ballot? However, they do unnecessarily clog the system, and both Acorn and state officials need to be diligent in weeding them out, which appears is what they are doing. But the real solution would be for the state to take responsibility for automatically registering voters using data that already exists at the Department of Motor Vehicles, Social Security Administration, and other data sources. This would avoid this problem and ensure that every voter was registered in time for Election Day. I also want to take this moment to commend Governor Schwarzenegger in California. He signed a myriad of bills a week and a half ago, and one of those bills permits voters over the next several years to register in California by computer, making it easier for people to register. I would hope that all of us would work nationally over the course of the next 4 to 8 years to make sure voting registration is easy and that we in fact eliminate the obstacles to voting that are detailed in this report. I close by sharing a quote from Hubert Humphrey. Shortly before his death, he spoke to a joint session of the House and Senate, and as a member of Congress, I sat and listened carefully. He said of all the words, and he was known for his long words, he said these were the most important words. The moral test of government is what we do to those in the dawn of life, our children, those in the twilight of life, the elderly, and all of those in the shadows of life, the poor, the sick, and the disabled. The efforts of Acorn and other community groups are working hard to get poor people registered so that they can participate fully in the American dream and the American society. So I commend all of the groups that have worked so hard, and I ask that we continue to recognize that this issue is a small issue compared to the many suppression issues that we face, and let's make sure that this election, as many people as possible have an opportunity to vote.
Thank you, Bob. And our last speaker, Miles Rappaport, former Secretary of State of Connecticut and the President of Demos.
Thank you, Steve. I served as Secretary of the State in Connecticut in the mid-90s, and I and the other secretaries that I worked with were deeply concerned at the lack of voter participation and the disinterest that many voters, especially young voters, had in actually registering and voting. We have an opportunity this year where we're seeing something extraordinary and I think wonderful, regardless of the outcome of the elections, happen, and that is people, and by the hundreds of thousands and millions, are anxious and eager to register and vote and be part of it, which makes it discouraging to me when I see the attacks on an organization like Acorn. I think Acorn has done a tremendous job of registering 1.3 million voters, has added to the leavening of our democracy thereby, and has dealt forthrightly with the difficulties that are absolutely going to take place whenever you have a large-scale organizational process with thousands and thousands of employees around the country. But I think by raising the issue of Acorn and its voter registration and the issue of voter fraud in general, a serious disregard, a disservice is what I mean. I'm sorry, a serious disservice is being done to the election process itself. We do have, as election officials, as people concerned about the election process, real issues that need to be dealt with this year, and this diverts attention from those challenges. The election officials all around the country, whether Secretary of the States or county officials, need to be ready for massive turnouts and have enough voting machines and trained poll workers and accurate voting lists. They need to do real voter education so that people know where they need to go to vote so they don't try to vote at the wrong precinct. They need to tell them what kinds of voter identification they will need, especially first-time voters who are required by the Help America Vote Act to do that. So the election officials need to be ready, and they need not to create policies that discourage people from voting. And by raising questions about the voter registration process and launching this attack on the work of voter registration groups, especially Acorn, I think that that kind of discouragement can creep into the system. We have real opportunities and real challenges, not just in this election, but going forward. I agree with what Bob Edgar said. We need to make our election process one that invites people into the process through universal voter registration, registration on Election Day, expanding opportunities for people to cast votes, getting voter education into the schools and civic education. There are all kinds of things. Fully implement the National Voter Registration Act, fully implement all of the things that encourage people to vote and don't discourage them. So I think that what I'm here to say today is that I do think that this criticism of Acorn is a diversionary issue that should not be allowed to cloud what's happening this year, which is an extraordinary flowering of democracy. Acorn is to be applauded for encouraging that, not criticized, and I'm proud to stand with them.
Thanks very much, Miles, Bob. We'll take questions in a second, but I just wanted to mention that we know there was a press conference earlier this morning. We are sending letters to former Senators Rudman and Danforth asking them to sit down and meet with us. We think that, I mean, they have been talking about our work now for about a month and haven't reached out to us. We know they're both honorable men with reputations for integrity. We think that if they were to sit down with us and understand the details of our registration programs, many of the concerns that they have raised will be allayed, and we hope they'll end up applauding the work that we've been doing to bring Americans into the voting process. So thank you.